Sound is good?
Sound is good. You're up. Take it away.
Well, it is wonderful to be with you all again. It's wonderful to see you. I've missed you. My title tonight is God, Gods, plural, Distraction and Light. I've had a question in my head going on for about 6 months now that has distracted me and caused a little rift in some of my thoughts about certain platforms of spirituality. And I really focused on it because it was kind of disturbing to me, and it caused me at times to even question some of the things that I've believed for many years. It may sound a little bit ominous as I start out. My question was so deep that it even kind of embarrassed me to ask it out loud, so I've held it within for a while. So I started reading some different things on this particular topic and listening to some podcasts from different directions. And as spirit would have it, things started falling into my lap. You know, you ask a question and things show up. Some of the things I found were rather strange and also surprising for me and very informative. So without wondering, I was wondering if there was a way I could take this crazy information and even make a talk out of it. And one morning, a few weeks ago, I'm in the recliner at 5:30 in the morning because my dogs and cats wake me up early and they're all laying on top of me. And I'm thinking about this topic, and all of a sudden I get what I would call a download, just this whole conversation in my head. So I jump up out of my recliner, run to the laptop and start typing. And I realize that there's some things I have to look up to kind of get my wording right. And I wanted to look up the word Elohim, if I've pronounced that correctly, Elohim. And I stumble on this guy on the internet. And I'm sharing this introduction first because, you know, we can ask something of spirit, and spirit will always tell us what it wants us to know, what we want to know in some way, whatever form it can provide to us, so that we'll follow it. So it was like traveling through a spider web, one thing after another, looking for my information to describe my thoughts. And I stumbled on this guy. So here we go. Michael Heygster is an American biblical Old Testament scholar and Christian author. His area of expertise is the nature of the spiritual realm in the Bible. I thought that was interesting, just that word itself, spiritual realm in the Bible, namely the divine counsel and hierarchy of spiritual order. So I thought that sounded pretty intriguing. So I'm looking up a good description for Elohim. I found Dr. Heygster, and I found this wonderful article that he wrote. And it says, we all have watershed moments in our life, critical turning points where from that moment on, nothing will ever be the same. One such moment in my own life came when I rediscovered the word Elohim. It was in a church on a Sunday morning while I was still in graduate school. I was chatting with a friend who, like me, was working on a PhD in Hebrew studies, killing a few minutes before the service started. I don't recall much about the conversation, though for sure it was something about Old Testament theology, but I'll never forget how it ended. My friend handed me the Hebrew Bible, opened to Psalm 82, and it simply said, or he said, read this and look at it closely. Okay, so he says the first verse hit me like a bolting of light. God, Elohim, stands in the divine assembly. He administers judgment in the midst of the gods, Elohim. Gods was plural. I've indicated the Hebrew word with the parentheses that caught my eye and put my heart in my throat. The word Elohim occurs twice in this short verse. Other than the covenant name Yahweh, it's the most common word in the Old Testament for God. The first use of the word in the verse worked fine. But since I knew my Hebrew grammar, I saw immediately that the second instance needs to be translated as plural. And there it was, plain as day. The God of the Old Testament was part of an assembly, a pantheon of other gods. Now, this is taken from an article that he titled, Who Are the Elohim? The answer might rattle your theology. Well, I'll be honest, rattled me a bit. And that sentence again was, the God of the Old Testament was part of an assembly, a pantheon of other gods, plural. A pantheon is a set of all gods of a religion, mythology, or a tradition. Okay, so let's take a minute with that. Maybe you guys knew that. I didn't. I never thought of God as one of other gods. We've been taught there's only one God. I had actually come to believe that the God of the Old Testament was angry and punishing, and the God of the New Testament was presented as loving and forgiving. But that was the extent that I'd come to. I just figured he'd taken the pill and gotten therapy and got happy. Well, sort of. But how I really been so naive to think that between the last chapter of the Old Testament, Malachi, and the first chapter of the New Testament, Matthew, that our one God had a sudden change of heart and decided to be a nice guy. This reading of Psalm 82 above is coming from the Hebrew Bible. But what came first, the chicken or the egg? It was the Hebrew Bible first or the Christian Bible? And I'd probably say the Hebrew Bible was first because of the Torah. But I started diving into my collection of Bibles. I went to my King James Version, the Living Bible, the New International Version, the Lamsal translation from the Aramaic, my Gnostic Bible. I even got out my mother's large print New Living Translation Bible. That same verse, Psalm 82, is translated in many different ways. God stands before the angels. God stands before heaven's court. God stands before the assembly of judges. God presides in the great assembly. He gives judgment among the gods, plural. The majority of Bible translations for us presents the wording that our one God is presiding over lesser beings, whether it's angels, judges, or other gods. However, this verse from the Hebrew Bible and some other versions tells us that the one God we have been taught about is part of an assembly of gods. That's what gets me. Okay. I need a breath on that one every time I read it. There are different stories written about God. The early God, when our lineage of humanity was still young. There's a story of two gods, or the Elohim. Historian Karen Armstrong, that I read about even in ministerial school, writes about two gods depending on which region the stories come from. In Judaism, there are 7 names for God. Would that mean there are 7 names for the one God or 7 gods? There's Yahweh, El, Eloah, Elohim, El Shaddai, if I pronounced that correctly. And when I looked that one up, it describes it as a darker energy God. And then here's a name that is very difficult to pronounce. If I said David, that would be close, but my tongue doesn't do those sounds, so I can't pronounce that correctly. And the 7th name is just Yah. So again, are these 7 names for the one Father God? Or are they all separate entities within different levels of authority? Here's a story that's written by a Jewish fellow that I do follow with some other things. And I just found this recently. All this information came at one time. Yahweh came to earth about 5,000 years ago. He was not alone. Yahweh is one of the Elohim, who the Jews decided to follow. He offered them a choice and they chose him. He accepted their forced decision. Yahweh's not a god. We know this as Yahweh demanded the Jews provide him with 6 liters of alcohol a day. He also made them pay fines in the form of silver shekels. In addition, they had to perform regular census of all that Yahweh owned. Yahweh was not omniscient if he had the Jews count themselves and their flocks and their lands so that Yahweh would know how much he owned. Yahweh was not transcendent, but had a physical body, that it craved drink, and it craved the fats of newborn lambs and newborn children. Yahweh provided not 10, but actually 613 commandments on how the Jews should live as his servants. Not all of them are easy to read. They contain details on how to satisfy his needs. Yahweh is reckoned as one of over 240 El who were claiming to be lords over the humans they found on earth. I think that's an interesting statement right there. He was not the boss of the Elohim, nor even in the top tier of the El here on earth. We would think of him as being a captain or a major in an army that had ranks extending to general. Yahweh was such an aggressive personality that the entourage of the El basically hated him and worked against him. The support staff of the Elohim, translated as archangels, who worked for the chief of the Elohim, got such crap from Yahweh that they constantly plotted his undoing. Yahweh wanted war, killing, sacrifice, separation, division based on us versus them, and I am more than you. There is legitimate historical evidence of the wars and the killings during that time. Okay, let me just say one more thing about Yahweh. According to this Hebrew biblical scholar, Elohim is a name giving to a disembodied spiritual entity, and not always just our God with a capital G. But the God that we know is the only one given a particular set of attributes of divine love, top tier. We know these attributes as perfect, immutable, transcendent, non-physical, omniscient, omnipresent, those three words, omnipotent, omnipresent, omnipotent. Okay, there you go. He's personal, he's free, he's all loving, all just, all merciful, and the creator of the universe. And a new word I learned, omnibenevolence, which is supremely good. And in Science of Mind, we say first cause. In the Old Testament, there are two gods named Yahweh, and this name is also given to Jesus. Jesus is Yahweh incarnate. There may be other sons of God, but only Jesus was Yahweh that comes as flesh. Okay, another breath. So I'm not being light and fluffy tonight. I'm giving you this side of my thoughts because maybe I'm not the only one who's ever run across this question. Has there always been more to the story? I think I've wondered this question most of my life. I'm not even sure where the question came from. I'm discussing a God that sounds like he might still be in control of some of the world today. War, killing, sacrifice, separation, division, based on us versus them. I'm more than you. If you're in a real formatted, strict program religion, are those people missing some of the other details, or are they in a constant place of judgment about others and the world because we're different from their religion? I think those are good questions. The description of war and killing and separation and division and us versus them, those are things we see in the news media today and even in social media. And I know some of you don't have TVs, but are you totally cut off from some of these world events? If you continue to read the rest of Psalm 82, it states that the gods were being condemned as corrupt in their administration of the nations of the earth. A God is condemning and reprimanding the corrupt gods for not doing their job correctly. These gods were defending the unjust, as it stated, and showing partiality to the wicked, and they're being called out for it. Further in Psalm 82, God says, I said you are gods, and that's small g, not capitalized. You are the sons of the Most High, but you will die like mere men. You will fall like every other ruler. That makes it sound like a hierarchy. I can remember Neil Donald Walsh, I think it was his third volume of Conversations with God, where he described a hierarchy of gods. That was like in the late 90s, I think it was. I didn't know what to make of that at the time. Dr. Heygster, who I've described at the beginning, states that several Old Testament passages describe an administrative structure existing in the heavenly realm. Okay, so what do we do with that? Am I crazy to work with an idea that there are some good guys and not some good guys in the spiritual realm that work with our earth and humanity? We as humans have free will to make our choice of faith, sovereignty, alliance, and allegiance, And how much better will that choice be when we have more of the story? Dr. Ernest Holmes from The Science of Mind, page 131, he says, man's idea of deity evolves with his other ideas. After a belief in many gods, small g, he comes to realize there is one mind and one spirit back of all manifestation. One spirit, one self-conscious life acting through the medium of one mind or one subjective law producing manifestations. Something happened in my own thoughts a few years ago, and just the term God didn't cover the concept for me. I thought of it in segments or in stages, actually. I would think of it, well, God will be an umbrella term for me. I did have some attachment to some old religious stuff that I had to admit, had to kind of let go of. But I needed something bigger and with more meaning. And I think that's when I changed what I called God. I changed it to the God source or source energy. That had meaning for me and it had placement for me. I don't really have the words to describe how using those terms, these new terms, fills me with the construct of God that I wanted to know. And then after working with Psalm 2 for the past few weeks, it has shocked me that my thoughts made sense. We're very sheltered down here in our third dimensional or fourth dimensional little earth place where we are. And what's out there is much bigger and layered than our minds can conceive at our point in our evolution. So there certainly could be other entities that have talents like gods. Maybe Greek mythology had it right all along. I don't know. Who knows? But there is only one creator, source energy, one creator. But it's been interesting to work with an idea that other gods have controlled us. Well, interesting may be a different way to say that. Other gods that have controlled us and bargained or distracting us to make us think that a lower God was the one God that we should worship and follow. That's what I think has happened. How else can we be so controlled and pulled by lower energies of war and greed and us against them, against others, us against them? We're distracted with things that make us feel good, but with justification, or ideas that lift us while still separating us at the same time. Things that feel easier than taking responsibility for ourselves and our lives. It's said that without knowing that there is dark forces of distraction bringing us pleasure, we could possibly be making choices that feed those dark forces without realizing it. The one true spirit God source is love, divine love and the brightest light. The one God is the only one with the full attributes of the Creator, as I listed above. I believe at times we need to check ourselves and make sure we're praying to the right God, the God of light and love. Sounds a little odd to have to say that, doesn't it? Since I've learned this, I'm checking my words. My words are powerful. This one guides us within ourselves, guides us for our love, our own light, our path of forgiveness to oneness, and a full understanding that the work comes from within, nowhere else, not something or someone on the outside of us. And the reward is far better than any distraction ever was or will be. Jesus in flesh said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. That's from John 8:12. Jesus came here to guide us out of the darkness into light and to show us who we are, and what we are capable of. Our spiritual mind treatment that we teach in Science of Mind is to guide our lives to be the best we can be in divine love, spiritual light, and knowing our oneness with Source and Jesus. Which God are you consciously choosing today? Make a conscious choice. In meditation, surround yourself in a shaft of brilliant white and golden light, and fill the shaft of light with love, with gratitude and joy, and with forgiveness. Breathe it into your heart and make the intention that it guides you throughout your day. When you are in that love and light, you raise your vibration. And in doing this, you raise the vibration around you. And that vibrates out to the world and to all the situations in the world. It is healing, no matter what it looks like on our level. It's healing, providing higher vibration to the situation as it plays out. That goes for Ukraine. Just send light and that loving vibration, because Spirit knows what to do there and what's going on that we may not know. Remember that everything is energy and is vibrating at or on a different level in order to become what it is to become. Your thought and prayer is a form of energy being expressed to become what it is to become. Your thought plus the feeling and emotion with that thought is the power of the vibration that goes out. Be the light that you are. You can be an example of the kind of life and the kind of world that comes from spiritual and conscious awareness and interacting with the love, with the God of love beside you. We are powerful beings. Do you know that? We are powerful beings, and it is free will, the very thing that makes us powerful. And some of the lesser gods don't want you to know that, because they can trick you when you don't know that. The divine plan is for each individual to be a creator, be a creator through free will, to know our power and be responsible for ourselves and our choices. You have free will and choice to do this. It's important for you and for humanity and for Gaia, our planet. And one last thing. I mentioned forgiveness to oneness. I found this wonderful forgiveness work from one of our ministers this week, and it was perfect timing. This is from Reverend Carrie Hunter from CSL Victoria, Canada. She says, there is one tenet I learned 20 years ago that has helped me more than any other. I always tell myself the truth, and frequently I have to ask myself, what am I pretending not to know? And she goes on, something I was inspired to do for forgiveness. I refuse to carry feelings of hurt, anger, and disappointment with me. One day, years ago, I was verbally attacked by an individual who told me he couldn't stand me because I was too Mary Poppins. I was too positive. He yelled at me, and I was both hurt and angry. He wasn't part of my congregation, but it was just someone I knew. I was determined to release my anger and my hurt through prayer, even if it took me all night. I sat in a comfortable chair and I repeated this prayer: God, love John through me and love me through John. Love John through me and love me through John. It took 3.5 hours, but when I was done, I felt myself in complete love with John. The next day, I was shopping for groceries and someone came up behind me and put his arms around me, and it was John. He apologized, saying he has a problem with anger management that he learned from his dad. He acknowledged that he no longer needed to be doing that. He said he loved me and didn't want anything to destroy the mentoring influence I was in his life. So for now, it only takes 15-20 minutes for me to release this with this technique that I do, and I'm grateful for John's outburst, or I may not have learned it. That's powerful. So remember that forgiving all in consciousness of healing, not condoning, is healing. Loving all in and as oneness is healing. Our job above everything right now is to bring more love and light into the world. And even a simple smile can do that. Thank you.